I heard the crowd quiet a minute ago. It must have been when the clock turned 7. Everybody thought something was going to start happening. Anyways, welcome to all of you on behalf of the Very Simcoe chapter of MAD. And we just hope that it's a really good evening for you. I would suspect that a lot of you have come perhaps looking for a little extra hope than what you have maybe right now, seeing who you can maybe hook up with from the other side, and it's comforting. I've had a private reading with Chris, actually. We'll get to Chris after, but we have a special guest. I'm going to introduce the special guest that will be speaking before Chris. She'll be speaking and then doing a questioning and answer period. Extensive interviews with 10 gifted mediums and their clients. Donna Smith-Moncrieffe reveals an in-depth look into how mediums interact with the spirit world and communicate with the deceased, how thoughts create reality, and how reincarnation and karma impacts mankind's existence. Donna Smith-Moncrieffe is the Director of Metaphysical Research, and I'm going to turn everything over to Donna right now. Welcome. Thank you so much, Donna.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Well, I'm so happy to be here in Barrie tonight. I could feel the energy up here. And thank you to Wood Parks Home. It's beautiful here. And I was especially excited about coming tonight, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I've known about them for years, but just because I knew that I was contributing to this talk tonight, I had a little look on the website last night and I thought, wow, 32 years of doing amazing work at this organization and preventing many, many tragedies. So I'd just like to give a round of applause to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And before I start my little talk, I want to tell you a little incident I had with my son about Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Now, he's only 7, so don't worry, because I think, don't worry, he's not drinking yet. But basically, he gets very interested in what I'm doing with my presentations and things like that. So he comes down last night and he says, he looks at the poster, because the poster has MAD on it, right? And then he looks at my presentation, he says, oh, no, Mommy, he says, the presentation, the name of it is, Why is Speaking to the Dead Challenging? And then he looks at the MAD symbol and he says, oh, I get why they're going to be mad, Mommy. Oh, no, they're going to be more than mad. They're going to be angry, Mommy, when you talk to these people about talking to dead people. Don't you know they can't talk to dead people, Mommy, because they're dead? So I said to him, okay, maybe in another 10, 15 years, I'll explain why I'm talking about dead people. So again, I'm really glad to be here to be contributing to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And as sort of a little introduction is, I'm Donna Smith-Moncrieffe, and I'm the Director of Metaphysics Research in Toronto. And I started this firm about 3 years ago to look more at afterlife issues. I'm actually, during the daytime, I work for the Government of Canada. I know it's odd. People cannot understand how I have such a rigorous job as a researcher for the Government of Canada. And by night, I'm studying afterlife issues. So 3 years ago, I embarked on a study related to mediums. And I started to systematically study 10 mediums, one of which was, where's Chris? Chris was one of the mediums that stood up to the plate. Really, really brave for him to do that. We don't have a lot of research. In fact, in Canada, this is the first research that has been systematically done on 10 mediums and their 88 clients. My background, I have 3 degrees in criminology, sociology, and psychology. And I have basically used my statistics and research skills to apply to this area. So my talk is not going to be, I'm not going to bore you with my personal study, but I'm going to share with you some insights. And it's going to be a pretty good segue for what Chris is going to be doing. So before I start, and believe me, you're going to do a little work too, because I'm going to be asking you some questions, take the pressure off of me. So before I start, I'm going to get a little feel for the audience. How many people, and don't be embarrassed, there's no how many people understand mediumship, what's going on tonight, or before you put your hands up? Or is it a situation, because I see some males here, and when I see some males, they're usually dragged here, or something like that. But you're going, yeah, he wasn't dragged here, was he? Oh my goodness. Okay, see, you're probably saying, how did you get him in the front seat? That's amazing. How many people have a feel for mediumship? It helps me because depending on who I'm talking to, believe it or not, mediumship it can get quite technical. I'm going to keep it light for those of you who don't understand. But can you give me a show of hands for people who get a feel for mediumship, who understand what Chris is going to be doing? Oh my goodness, 2 hands? No, come on. Is that because you're all watching the Long Island Medium? No, okay. Well, because I think there's been just an upsurge of people who are starting to understand mediumship. For those of you who don't understand, don't worry, I'm going to give you some clarifying points. So as I said, as I talked about a little bit before about my son and talking about the title of my presentation, Why is Talking to the Dead Challenging? For those people who don't understand mediumship, of course, they actually just believe that if mediums know everything, they should know absolutely everything. They should be able to connect with someone who's deceased. They should be able to tell me what's going to happen to me, what happened this morning, what's going to happen to me next week. That is absolutely not what I found in my research. And not to say that there are authentic mediums, but I want to clarify some points for you. I want to help you. I'm doing this because I feel that it's important for people to have the implications, a better understanding of what mediumship is about. It has a great impact on our lives. If it is true that people are with us, we should know about it. It has implications for now, and it has implications for where we're going in the afterlife. And unfortunately, there are too many disillusions about what mediums do. And so for the first part, I'm going to first talk about some of the factors that contribute to that. But before I start, I want to give you sort of a breakdown of where we are in our society right now in Canada in terms of belief systems. 50% of the population are believers, but they believe in an afterlife, but that doesn't mean that they believe that someone can talk to the dead. Then there's another 20%, 20% that are skeptics. How many of those are you in the audience? And just be honest. It's all the males. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. Please, could you put your hands higher? That's usually skeptics are okay. Like, we're under 20% here.
They won't come here if they're skeptics, right?
Well, you'd be surprised because skeptics, and when I say skeptics are not people who don't believe. Skeptics are like me when I started out on my research or they're open-minded. They're thinking about the plausibility, but they're saying, this doesn't look quite right, okay? And then there's another 15% who are religious. And some could argue with me that that's not mutually exclusive in those categories. But I get 5 emails a day with people preaching to me about why I shouldn't be doing this or why mediums shouldn't be doing this, because mediumship is evil and that they believe that, oh yes, mediums are talking to somebody, but it's not the deceased, it's demons. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to read to you a typical, I just finished this article for a magazine in November that'll be published in November, and I'm going to give you a typical little type of email that comes to me during the day. And by the way, this is no disrespect to religion. I have a great amount of respect for religion. It's just that unfortunately there's some disillusion as to what mediumship is. So here's a typical email. You have already come under the Lord's judgment. I'm warning you to repent and make it right and apologize for people for leading them to hell at death. Psychics and mediums get their information from evil spirits. It's expressly forbidden in Scripture to consult with them. Satan is the great deceiver and leads people to follow these evil spirits. Repent now so you will see and experience the kingdom of God. Okay, so how many people thought I replied very nicely? I just say thank you for the forewarning, very nicely. And I kind of run into my bathroom and go, oh my God, I'm going to hell. No, I don't, in fact, because, and this is a whole other talk I would do. I'm not going to get into this. This is extremely important that I focus on this because unfortunately with people, really, how many people here potentially, if their priest knew that they were here, they'd be in a lot of trouble. No? Because you guys don't go to church. Okay, I saw some hands at the back. But seriously, do you know how many mediums tell me that there are people that are so scared they want to come to them, but because their church has told them this is evil, they've stayed away from it. And I actually think it's an important discussion because if we don't get that out and sort of clarified, I do clarify not only in my book, but in this article I've written for November, why there's such a misunderstanding there's a historical relationship between why people think that this is evil. I personally, before I go on, do not think that it's evil at all. I've seen within my study and over the 8 years of seeing mediums, have only seen well-being come from it. And then along that line, we have another 15% who are materialists. Okay, materialists are people who actually come out of the Newtonian physics era, which they believe that your consciousness, when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about talking, we're hearing, we're seeing, we're talking to one another. Consciousness resides in the brain, okay? Now, many studies, including near-death studies, out-of-body studies, have proven, it's a scientific fact, that our consciousness is outside of our brain. It doesn't reside in our brain. And so materialists feel that, anything that a medium is doing is impossible, because consciousness, when you're dead, and consciousness does not continue beyond death. So this is the diversity that we face in Canadian society right now. There's a lot of misunderstanding and not a lot of understanding. So let us go into the first factor that I wanted to talk to you about tonight. So mediumship. Mediumship, I've heard a lot of mediums and people say that everybody has psychic abilities. Now, in fact, all of us do, because we're physical beings we're spiritual beings having a physical experience. It's not the other way around. And so, I actually do understand and agree with people that argue with me that everybody has mediumistic abilities, but not true. So in my study, I interviewed many mediums that could not be part of my study because they just weren't able to connect with spirit in an evidential way. By evidence, I mean being able to demonstrate clairvoyance, which is clear seeing, clairaudience, which is clear hearing, or clairsentience, which is clear feeling. They weren't able to demonstrate that for me in my study. And so another factor what you can tell with a real medium that has the factors that are able to convey messages are, I found in my study that 6 of the 10 mediums actually had a physical difference in their One other difference that we definitely know exists in mediums are physical mediums. And physical mediums are mediums that are actually able to demonstrate, not what Chris is doing tonight is mental mediumship. He's able to use telepathy to communicate information from the spirit world to you tonight. Physical mediums are rare. I only know of 2 in Canada. Physical mediums are able to elicit through the orifices of their body, the nose, the navel. Where's the other orifice? Oh, the ear. Sorry. I'm not going to discuss all the orifices tonight. Please get that off the tape, honey. Through ectoplasm. How many people here tonight have heard of the term ectoplasm? Could I see higher? Okay, I'd like you to tell me where you know that word from.
Ghostbusters.
1, 2, 3 in the microphone.
Ghostbusters!
What would we do without the Long Island medium and Ghostbusters? In Canada, we would be totally ignorant. Right? Excellent, ectoplasm, and that was the slimy green thing. But did you know, and I didn't know, when I was watching Ghostbusters, I had no idea that stuff was real. Scientists have determined ectoplasm is actually real. They have been able to, in mediumship circles, which currently occur in Germany, and if anybody is interested, I can give them the link to the website where you can actually see demonstrations of physical mediumship. Very, very difficult to see. It takes years for physical mediumship to occur because the ectoplasm that develops in the medium is also developed through the circle that they work in. And ectoplasm is very dangerous to a medium. If somebody, in particular Helen Duncan, for example, when she was in the 19th century, she was demonstrating physical mediumship. And sorry, I need to back up. I didn't tell you that when the ectoplasm is released from the medium's body, this allows the spirit world to show their actual face or hand through, because it's something about the substance that allows the spirit world to show themselves. And I know some people, some of the men here are going, it's time to run, honey. I gotta go home to whatever it is that I was. It's okay, it was on Ghostbusters, it's okay. So a quick story about that, just so you understand, because I was really wondering, why in my study have I not come across physical mediums? I did one. He's an older gentleman who explained to me that he was very, very sick after he did it. But the long and the short is, the reason why they're very rare is that it's very dangerous. So Helen Duncan in the 19th century was a famous physical medium who was demonstrating the ability to either bring wrappings, make voices come through, and actually what we call materializations. What happened is the police raided the actual mediumship circle. The ectoplasm quickly whipped back into her body. They had to rush her to emergency. She had burns all over her body and she died in 2 days. So that's the story of Helen Duncan. You can look it up. And so ectoplasm is now, the last time it was actually demonstrated was the Scholes experiment. You could look that up in England. And I'm actually in contact with a researcher in Ottawa, Canada. Woo! It's hard to find these researchers in Canada. I think they're hiding. Who's working with the physical mediumship. And I think that I'm hoping that we're going to start to hear more about that. Okay, so I've explained to you about mediumship. And now I'd like to tell you about some of the other factors that contribute to clear communication. Okay, and I want you to think about that as you work with Chris tonight. The other major factor is the spirit world. How many people think that what happens tonight is all about Chris and how good he is? Chris put his hand. You know what? You guys didn't see this, but it's not like Chris went me. Like he went. I'm really surprised at you, Chris. You've heard this talk before. You know it's not all about you. No. Chris is great. Seriously, he really is professional. And no, I didn't mean that sarcastically. No, I didn't. He's really professional. Really and truly, I'd like to ask that question, not to you, Chris, to the rest of the group. How many people think, now just be honest with me, how many people think that the spirit world has anything to do with what's going on tonight? Okay, just the front row, the eager beavers. And the back row. What happened to the middle row? There's something going on here. Spirit world has a lot to do with what's going on tonight. I'm going to give you two particular examples of why. Okay? Spirit decides who comes through, when they come through, and how they come through. And I had an example of this. I probably have my own, but I really think just to demonstrate to you tonight how very profound that is Maureen Hancock. She's a medium in the United States. She had a show where it was perfect demonstration of what I'm talking about. The woman went to see her about whether her mother was deceased. She went to see the medium to be able to determine if her new fiance was good enough for her to marry. When she consulted the medium, is my new beau okay? The medium said, you know what? She's retreating. I can't understand why she's retreating, but she won't answer this question, okay? Well, what happens is she ends up going home. She calls off the wedding. It's over. It's done. Well, fiance comes storming back in to see the medium. God knows what a medium is. I don't think he even knew. But he said, whoever you are, now my fiance does not want to marry me. So Maureen says, okay, you know what? This is not how mediumship works. This is not what was meant to be. Let's all go together to your home and find out, what the mother has to say about this wedding. So it's the fiance herself. They get into the room, and you can see this. If you're interested, it's on YouTube. This is real. This happened. They get back in. The mother comes back. The medium's able to get the mother. The woman starts to talk about the fiance again, and she starts to retreat. She's talking about a fur coat. She keeps bringing the medium to a fur coat. When they finally decide to drop the issue of the marriage and focus on what spirit is trying to tell them, they go down to the basement, they find a fur coat, and what do you think they find in the fur coat? Not a ring. A ring for the wedding. You guys are really... An insurance policy. An insurance policy. And you should have seen them at the end of the show. They were happily getting married. But the point that I make, and this is real, they found it literally the way it was shot, and I know TV, I mean, I wasn't there, I don't know. I mean, but the point, because I've studied mediumship and I know how it works, they were so focused on getting one thing. But this is why the mother kept retreating, is because she wanted them to focus on what they needed to. So I want you to really keep that in mind. The other reason why Spirit does this is you are here to learn lessons. Remember I told you you were a spiritual body having a physical experience. That's what we're here for. So I know in my early days, I'd go to a mediumship. I just want to know whether my career is going to go okay, how much money I'm going to make, and am I going to marry somebody. That was it. But really, that's not what mediumship is about. Mediumship is about spiritual messages and spiritual lessons. You've come here to learn lessons so that when you go forward again, you're going to continue to go on to learn lessons. So I want you to remember that. That's a factor in mediumship. What you came here to hear is maybe not what Chris is going to tell you, because it's what Spirit wants to tell you. Okay? And one other point about Spirit that I'd like to share with you. Yes. Very interesting. And I always find 19th century mediums and scientists have great knowledge, great knowledge. And I want to just read for you another piece, because you think that Spirit knows everything and is so intelligent because you think that it's in a divine dimension. But in this, Leonard Piper, this is a story of Leonard Piper written by Michael Timms. Michael Timms wrote this. It's a great book because Leonard Piper was an excellent excellent medium in the 19th century. Frederick Myers ends up coming through. Frederick Myers was the head of the Psychic Research Society in the States. And I'm just going to read you this little blurb to help you understand how difficult it is for those on the other side to communicate with us. He writes, Hare was told that the spirits encountered much difficulty in communicating, as there are no words in the human language in which spiritual ideas may be embodied, so as to convey their literal and exact signification. We are obliged oftentimes to have recourse to the use of analgonisms and metaphorical modes of expression, his deceased father informed him. In our communication with you, we have to comply with the peculiar structure and rules of your language, but the genius of our language is such that we can impart more ideas to each other in a single word that you can possibly convey in 100. So what he's talking about here, and this is somebody communicating and channeling through a medium, I hope you got this message. It's a different language they're using. So right now I'm struggling to learn my advanced French so I can communicate like I'm doing in English, in French. And I know sometimes with my private tutor, when I'm saying, just tell me how to use this phrase in English, it doesn't work. It's a completely different phrase, and that's what they're talking about. So I just want you to understand this, that they don't have the perfect way of giving, for example, Chris tonight, the symbols. In fact, sometimes they have to just let them feel it. And when a medium says, I'm feeling it, there's no words, they give you the actual feeling, and sometimes asphyxiation. I don't know if you read Chris's book, I'm not sure he talks about in his, but I picked it up and put it in mine. He actually felt before somebody came in to a reading, his whole neck being strangled and couldn't breathe. And basically, as soon as the guy came and he started talking about it and asked if somebody in his family was hung himself, immediately it went away. And that spirit just saying, I don't think you're going to get it if I explain by words. I'm just going to let you feel it. That's called clairsentience. Okay, finally, how many people here think that you play a part in tonight's communication with Spirit? Oh, I'm surprised at this. Can I hear from you? I told you you're going to do some work. Okay, who wants to tell me? I'm going to ask 3 people. And whoever gets the right answer gets these baskets. Just kidding. I don't know. I don't know what those baskets are for. I shouldn't be giving away things that are not mine. But they're pretty. Who wants to share with us how they think you contribute to what's happening in the communication? Oh, okay.
Because in essence, because I believe that in essence we're all one. So in that sense, we contribute to each other all the time.
Can you just keep talking? Because I love the break. Thank you. And I'd like...
Oh, thanks, Kim. We've been talking to our loved ones on the other side for days now. So we're already completely connected walking in the door.
Okay, thank you. And does anybody else want to contribute how they think they're playing? And I'm going to... One more. Not going to continue unless I hear one more. I think we said, oh, great. Nobody else wants to tell us. Okay, yes, please.
I think
You can stand up.
Oh, sorry. Because we're here to learn lessons and to gain knowledge, and it has to be our free will to do that. So if we ask, then we shall receive if we're open to it. And I think that's what's going to happen tonight.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. But she's got to add one more thing. Okay.
I think that we are spirit. So that's the oneness.
Okay. That's excellent. Thank you. First of all, let's give our three ladies a round of applause. No, that was excellent. And I do want to say just two things about this before I end my talk. Is they all picked up on areas which I call, if one thing I want you to take home tonight, besides some great messages from Chris, is the concept of vibrational frequency. This is a scientific, you know it, she loves it, okay. Vibrational frequency is a concept and it's a scientific fact. So some of you here may think some of the stuff that this Donna girl is talking about is a little bit of, pseudoscience. No, there's 6 concepts at the beginning in my book that I talk about that are scientific fact. The spirit world didn't want me to say this because the fan went on and said, shut this girl up. No, vibrational frequency is a scientific fact in that when your cells, we're all just cells. And when your cells are vibrating very slowly, if you're depressed, you're angry, resentful is the worst. You're just vibrating like this. When you vibrate like that, you attract other cells around you. Depression, anger, resentment. Do you ever notice that when you're down and you're depressed and you're angry? All sorts of bad things just continue to come around you. She puts her hand up. That's me. No, and that's vibrational frequency. That is just you attracting that stuff to yourself. When you're like this and you're excited and the music was playing before we got in, you've heightened your vibrational frequency so much that other people around you are attracted to that. Other cells are around you. And the reason why I bring up the concept of vibrational frequency, which by the way is such a scientific fact, you can see it under infrared light. You can see your cells moving. And if anybody's interested, my newest research that I'm working on is with quantum biofeedback systems. And it's interesting to watch your vibrational frequency. If you're not sure how you're feeling, you can actually see your cells vibrating. The reason why I bring this up in relation to spirit communication tonight is I'm not sure how many of you know is in the spirit world, they are vibrating at such a high speed. That's why you can't see them. That's the only reason they're here. Their vibrational frequency is so much faster than ours that we're not really in tune with it. But mediums like Chris, they can get up to that speed and communicate with them. Now, the reason why I say that you contribute to what happens tonight is your whole feeling and your way you're feeling, especially, I've had cases of observations with a medium and a sitter with that they're really angry and they're like that. Tell me what you're going to tell me. They're blocking the flow of spirit. It's not that the spirit people don't understand it. It's that they're doing their darndest to lower their vibrational frequency. It is extremely difficult for your loved ones to come through because they have to lower their vibrational frequency to meet ours. Another fact that I just want to let you know before we have a quick question and answer period is post-analysis is your part as well. How many people have seen a medium before, just took the information and didn't think about it after? How many? Okay. How many people, though, have heard from the medium, heard some information, it didn't resonate, but they thought about it, they asked people in their family, do you know so-and-so, do you know this and that? Has anybody been able to validate information? Okay, so more hands. That's post-analysis, because it's very important to understand that the spirit world can do 2 things. They can tell us things that we know, because I have skeptics all the time. They go, why do you waste your time on this? He told me everything I already know. was a waste of my time. I said, well, if they didn't communicate anything you knew, then you couldn't validate anything. But spirit also gives us information that we don't know. And for scientists, it's very important that you get information that needs to be checked by other people, because there's scientists in the world that fought to say that this wasn't real. They said it's not survival of consciousness. Survival of consciousness is the formal term in science, that your consciousness survives the physical death of the body. They say that the medium is reading the mind. It's just telepathy. We're all dead after we go. It's just telepathy. But I have observed too many cases where the medium told a person information that they didn't know and only the deceased person knows. So we know it's not mind reading. Okay? So with that, I've given you in this short space of time about 8 factors that contribute to spirit communication. My prediction is that in several years to come, as we continue to research this, we're going to find out it's much more complex than 8 factors. And with that being said, I'm going to open it up to you to ask some questions and answers to me about anything that you want to know about mediumship, anything I mentioned in my little talk. I also study the nature of predictions. It was the first study in Canada to follow 19 people over a 2-year period to determine if mediums can actually predict. You can ask me any of those questions. So I put it over to you. And could we have the mics down here? Thank you.
Sorry, I just find it, when you're saying about like spirit, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're saying that spirit. Oh, I not. Is that better? How's this? Good? Okay. So when you're saying about spirit, and then you're saying that somebody or they connect with somebody that brings that person over, like what are you saying spirit? Is it just
Great question.
Like, who is that?
Excellent question. You're right. I should be so much more specific. Thank you for asking that question. There are 3 types of beings that we know. Oh, I could discuss the 4th, but then you'll run me out of the building for sure. But for sure, discarnates. That's a good word for you. It's a Latin word for a spirit without a physical body, and that's your loved ones. Okay? I'm not going to tell you anything about demons because it's not true and I don't believe it. Okay? So the first one is discarnates. Okay? The second one is spirit guides and entities, sometimes called masters. And what's interesting about that, when mediums talk about this distinction, they talk about them being a little more general. It doesn't feel like they're family members coming through. And spirit guides, everybody has a spirit guide when they come into this life. You've probably felt them. You probably want to get to know them. There are certain ways to get to know them. And some of them change throughout your lifetime. And then there are also groups of soul group entities, which are higher entities that are grouped together at different levels of dimensions. Okay, and I know you're squinting your face at that, but the reason why we know that they're soul groups and entities, because we know of, if anybody reads the work like Seth speaks an amazing classic work. It's difficult for you to understand unless you read the literature, though she channeled an entity that had about 6 or 7 people merged together. One of the things you have to understand is we're energy, just as this lady said, and energy can group together as different states of consciousness, and so they can also disband. It's a very difficult concept to have in a short space of time, but you asked, so it's discarnates, spirit guides, and entities, and I could add the other one, and I know it's difficult, and I actually don't feel that comfortable talking about extraterrestrials, but I'm going to do a lot more talking because mediums have discussed channeling extraterrestrials. And the physical medium in Ottawa, who I can openly talk about because he's just recently published his book, and I've talked about it, he is channeling all sorts of extraterrestrials. And one of the things I said to him when I had the discussion with him, I said, please don't tell me you're telling me it's ETs and that's replacing discarnates, and absolutely not. These are just another dimension of our race that they're communicating with. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. It's not just one being, it's different. And I would just add one more thing. They tell us different information. Discarnates, when they tell you things like you should do this and I predict that you do that, they do not have the kind of knowledge that higher entities do. So your loved ones, when they pass, are learning just like you. So you have to be careful about when a medium tells you what Sally says you should be doing. And Sally is pretty much the same as she was here. It's just she's on the other side. It doesn't make her more divine. So they have different levels of information. Can I have another question, please? There's a lady there at the back and then on the other side as well.
Earlier, sorry,
A little louder, please. No.
I don't need the microphone, I'm Italian.
It's so good that we have diversity here, eh?
It's like I'm Oprah, it's my own talk show. Earlier this evening you were talking about how mediums are wired differently than your non-medium. My question to you is whether or not they know if the wiring among the mediums is it the same strain of something that's similar? Like if they did an MRI on me, would they know that, oh, I don't know that I'm a medium, but my MRI says that I am?
That's an excellent question. I do not think we have enough information on this. So first let me clarify, I said 6 of the 10 mediums. And the other four may not have mentioned it in their interview. So they may not even know themselves. So I first want to just clarify that that doesn't mean all of them have it. I don't think we're that advanced to be able to study, for example, what this similarity is. I think it's an excellent question because even the medium that I told you about, they begged me not to write or talk about it with their name, but said share it out with people because it's embarrassing for them, or not really embarrassing. They're scared of how they'll be treated. Think about it. So when you ask that question, that would mean that the medical community would start rounding them up and treating them like, when we had, you've seen those shows Alien, that kind of thing. So it's a very careful thing that we're dealing with. And so to answer your question, we're not that advanced yet as to what that is. Any other questions? I thought there was a question at the back there. Go ahead.
I believe that we all have the ability, and it's just buried so deep inside that many of us, most of us, maybe never realize it. Maybe afraid of it, maybe I'm not, but I haven't realized it yet. Well, maybe you have.
Yeah, and thank you for that comment. And I think definitely when I talk about it's different levels of mediumistic ability, we do know that before we all had cell phones, and before we all had TV and internet, before we had telephones, we were all communicating telepathically. So it's actually a gift. It's actually a natural gift that we all have. It's just now, for example, people like Dean Radin, Professor Dean Radin, they're doing their best to be able to find statistical proof of that, which is very difficult. But thank you for your comment, because absolutely, but I would still say it was very difficult for me to take that approach in my study because I did have to turn many people who stated that they thought they had mediumistic abilities away from my study. Because if I put mediocre mediums in my study, then when I was testing, my major question was, is there an afterlife? If I was using mediocre mediums, then I wouldn't be able to attribute the results to the nature of reality. I would be attributing it to, well, it's just mediocre mediumship. So just to share with you, I agree with your point, but I believe there's very different distinctions with those abilities. So thank you. And I think, did I see this gentleman? Oh, everybody applaud, a question from a male, yes.
You were saying that mediums are wired differently. Is it the result of an accident or a specific incident?
That's excellent question, and maybe I shouldn't speak for Chris, but because it's his event, I really should. Do you mind, Chris, if I just turn that question over to you? Oh, she just went, nope, back to you. Okay. Oh, it's okay. It is okay. I would love Chris to be able to just quickly share with you his incident, because I think your question asked, you asked, did they know about it before? What was?
Is it a specific event that happened?
A specific event, yes. So let's hear from Chris in terms of his specific.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Chris. Oh, it's not on. Sorry. caught you off guard there. Sorry.
It is on, but it's very very
Okay.
quiet.
Check this.
It is on.
Okay. This didn't go as planned. I wasn't planning on speaking right now.
Sorry, Chris.
That's okay. I could simplify it and say, buy my book. I wrote about it. That'd be the marketing.
That's so subtle.
Okay. What I would tell you is in 1994, I was a heavy, heavy boy. And I had been extremely heavy all my life. And I wasn't happy at that point in my life, and I was very stressed over my work. And what had happened one day in June, I think it was June 17th, I was at work, and we went for a coffee break because we worked in the newspaper industry and we didn't work too hard. So and that's why I was fat. I could go eat and drink. And so we went to the coffee shop. While I was sitting having coffee, and probably breakfast if the truth be known, my brain started shutting down. And the people that I had worked with for years, I didn't know their names. I forgot them. I knew them, but I didn't know who they were. And it really confused me. And so I left halfway through the break or breakfast and went back to the office. And by the time I got to the office, I was feeling worse. And I didn't know what it was. And we have two Lindas up here. One's my mom, and one's a good friend of mine. And Linda has a business in Alliston, the lady in the stripes, locksmith shop, and her locksmith shop was right next door to where my newspaper office was. And I went in to see her because I knew something was wrong. And within a few minutes, my editor came back, rushed me to the hospital. They did a battery of tests that day. They don't know what happened to me, but I did not know who my family was. I got very aggressive with everybody in emergency. They had to give me enough tranquilizers that would knock down the beer team of the horses. What's that? The pull the barrels. And it still didn't knock me out. And they sent me over here to Barrie to the hospital. And I had the lumbar puncture test. I had CAT scans to make sure I didn't have a brain tumor. They didn't know what it was. And they shipped me back to Alliston because the tests all came back clear. It wasn't meningitis. It wasn't anything like that. And that was about 9 in the morning when it started, 8:39. And I remember waking up at 1:30 the next morning in the hospital bed in Alliston, and I knew who I was again. Everything had come back to me. And as soon as I opened my eyes, my mom was at the foot of the bed with her one sister, and they started asking me the most irritating questions. Like, who are you? Do you know the year? Peppering me with questions. Women do that. Well, the women I know. And I was a little annoyed, but I didn't know what had went on, and I didn't know how scared everybody was with what was happening to me, or I probably would have strung them along had I known. But I answered correctly. So I came out of the fog, and then I went to a specialist in the city, and they couldn't determine based on any of the tests what had happened to me. So I know as a result of that, I was in the hospital 3 days, and the kicker was not so much that event, I think, that triggered it, but when I was at home, first night from the hospital, I got up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. That's how honest I am. You're going to hear a lot of honesty tonight. And I was washing my hands, and as I did, I had this rupturing explosion in the back of my head, right here. And I dropped to my knees and I screamed. And I reached for the back of my head thinking there's a hole in my head, like somebody had shot me. And I knew my wife was in bed. So I was pretty safe there. But I hollered for her nonetheless. And she came in and I was on my knees on the floor, all 270 pounds of me, and grabbing my head. And what I would tell you was, if I don't know what it would feel like to be shot and what you would even be aware of for the split second burning and searing, but that's what it was like in my head, only it came from inside out. And then it dissipated. And then I had no more headaches at all. And I know, I can't prove it, maybe Donna will one day, I know something happened back here in my head that enables me to now do what I claim to do. So that's how it started, and that was my little incident.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for that, Chris. And I'm going to end off too just by clarifying, because I think it was an excellent question that you brought up. That Dr. Oz did a special. Did anybody see Dr. Oz where Teresa Caputo was on there? Teresa Caputo's a medium. Well, and of course you saw that they tested her brain scan with Dr. His name eludes me right now, but he is a renowned, world-known doctor for this. Scanned them on national TV while she was reading somebody, and Dr. Oz obviously isn't going to be shady about this, and actually definitely saw different. As soon as she started connecting with spirit, you saw the alpha levels completely change, which is so consistent for anybody. Does anybody do yoga or meditation? Okay. Well, you know that when you're doing these kinds of exercises, you change your level of consciousness, and the scanner was able to determine that. And this isn't new. Dr. Gary Schwartz was the first doctor to study this in the United States as well. And that's actually, he has some of his footage on YouTube with 5 mediums doing readings and doing brain scan, and he saw statistically significant difference as well. And so we do know that there are physical changes in the body, and again, like this other lady told us, it would be great if we could do some more advanced research on what that actual change is. Does anybody have one last question for me? No? Okay, with that I would say thank you very much. Your questions were lovely, and have a good night.